But all right, let's check out Nik's video here, The Problem with Modern Metalcore. Now, the time that we're watching this, okay, we're doing this on our Saturday stream here where we're checking out all the new releases from the week. So this will be a perfect time to check out what's going to be wrong with the list of songs that we're going to listen to. And Nik knows a thing or two about modern metalcore, okay? He knows a thing or two. So I'm very interested in his thoughts on the subject. So let's see what my dude has to say. Here we go.
Metalcore is something I hold like near and dear to my heart. I mean, I grew up on 2000s metalcore. A lot of you guys know that by now. And ever since, I listened to other styles of music, other subgenres, non-metal things. But, my heart is with the core and the breakdowns and the 5/7/8s and
the 5/7. We just listened to some 5/7/8s with "I Killed the Prom Queen." And Void, thank you for the 100 bits. Yeah, listen, we all love metalcore. Whether you got into it later, you got into it, back in like the the Poison the Well days. We all love metalcore, but there's a but coming. I know that at the end of this sentence here, Nik is going to hit us with that but. Here we go.
And all of that. And as much as I love the metalcore scene and the bands in it, I feel like something that is a pattern that keeps happening is a metalcore band will get really big as a metalcore band.
We know where he's going. They get really big and they turn into...
But then they'll want to stylistically try something new.
Yep.
And, not saying every band that does this does a great job, by the way. There's a lot of really, really shit songs that have come from bands that were originally metalcore and then they tried something else.
True and real. I'm glad that Nik is saying this because here's the thing, man. I think that a lot of bands that were so good as a metalcore band, they try to change their sound. Some bands pull it off very well. But let's be honest. I think some of these bands get a little bit too big for their britches and they're like, oh, we are distinguished songwriters now. And then they fall flat on their face.
Didn't work out. Like, that's fine, right? But there's also a lot of great songs in different spaces that help elevate the genre by getting new, audiences indirectly into metalcore through these bands trying new things that a lot of times aren't really celebrated. It's always like, oh, maybe this song's a little softer. Even if it's a good song, sell out. You know what I mean? Or, oh, this song's too weird, or this song is too industrial, or this song's too this. And the band just gets shunned, and it makes the band not even feel like they probably want to be a part of the scene anymore, which just sucks because then they have.
Yeah, so that's a tough. So there's a few things there. One, if you do, I think here's the problem. I think that there's so many bands that are doing like Parkway Drive. Somebody, Jens in the chat just said Parkway Drive. There's so many bands that were metalcore forever, and then they switch 15 years later. So here, the thing is like, I get wanting to evolve and be different. I get that. But you also, you can't expect people to be like, hell yeah, brother, like with their new sound after they've been conditioned to listen to a certain sound for, 10, 15 years. So I get it. Personally, I like a lot of some of like the new Architect stuff, like that more industrial feel, but I know it's not for everybody. But the thing is like, again, it's like if you do the same thing for 10 to 15 years and then somebody changes that on you, you're going to have a little bit of pushback. I think that there's going to be a time where that may happen. You may lose some fans or they may just listen to the old stuff. But I think the solution is to kind of do what Spirit Box has been doing. They have been throwing curveballs sound-wise since day one. They have an album where it's like, these songs are for these people, these songs are for these people, these songs are for these people, and then those different groups of people kind of, they're like, oh, let me check this out, let me check that out. And I think that's the way to do it. But again, if you do it for 15 years and you want to just change overnight like that, there's going to definitely be some pushback.
Have to isolate such a huge chunk of their fan base with no other, choice other than just sticking to the one style of metalcore and hitting that ceiling forever.
And I will say this too, I don't mean to pause it again, but there is like this kind of a vicious cycle, right? Where a band can do the same sound for so long, but then they get blamed for doing that sound forever, and then they switch, and then people don't like it. But if they keep doing it, they just kind of rinse and repeat, copy and paste. At the end of the day, I mean, you just got to do whatever you want to do and just say F it. I mean, really, that's what you got to do.
never being able to, expand their wings more and grow even more, which is something I don't want to see happen either, right? Metalcore bands need to be able to feel comfortable to be a metalcore band and try different things and expand and bring other influences in, because that's what.
Yeah, and so like actually this video kind of ties into, like, I made a post like I don't know how many weeks ago, but I was like, who is like the biggest like pure metalcore band? Not like Parkway, because they've obviously ventured outside of that. Not Spearbox, because they're kind of a mixed bag in terms of sounds. Not Architects, because they've clearly moved away from it. Like, who is the biggest like pure straight up metalcore band? Maybe Killswitch Engage. They kind of have a little bit more of like the hard rock to them, but they kind of stay, in that metalcore realm. Is it Fit for a King? It's kind of hard to tell, because eventually, we've seen the joke from people like Finn McKenty or whatever that, metalcore bands, they live long enough to become butt rock bands or something like that.
What grows it. That's what raises this ceiling. That's what deathcore literally is doing right now. That's why I think deathcore is literally more exciting to me than some of the modern metalcore stuff happening, because there's just new innovations and they don't care. They're trying new things, and as long as there's heavy breakdowns mixed in with whatever other clean singing or chill vibes they're doing, usually they're down with it if it sounds good and emotionally connects. And it's
and that's actually, it's kind of funny because we were just talking about that a little bit ago. I feel like with deathcore, there is like, you have the subgenre of deathcore, but there's so many different branches. You can go down, the Spite route and get that more hardcore edge. You can go down like the Brand of Sacrifice that is like just very like modern sounding, like kind of blends in a little bit of metalcore, but like very modern sounding, very like production heavy, just massive sounding stuff. You can go down like the Darko, that's more like just insane, trippy style. You can go down the the unique, what I like to call like the Unique Leader record style, which is like really kind of more towards that death metal side. And then you can also go towards like a Slaughter to Prevail, who's kind of leaning more into like that new metal. So, and I feel like with metalcore, there is kind of like this like one kind of realm that bands stick in. And I make the joke all the time that I'm thoroughly convinced that these other bands like just aren't aware of these other bands. Like, they don't listen to anything else, because a lot of them kind of have a similar style, and they and it's funny because like they present it in a way that's like, this is like a brand new kind of thing, like hell yeah, like whatever. But it's like, no man, we've heard this like 15 times this week already. You know what I mean? For sure. And no problem, Jens. Have a good one. But yeah,
it's easier to even make those things more viral. They connect more with even the TikTok area, which I know is not the favorite metalcore scene area, but the TikTok audience and the viral audience and the mainstream audience. It's just easier to connect to, I feel, deathcore nowadays. And
that's a great point Nick brings up, because I think like because here's the thing with a lot of deathcore songs, especially like, Lorna Shore is obviously the big deal right now. There are a lot of deathcore songs that kind of are epitomized by that 30-second to 1 minute portion of the song, which is perfect for TikTok, which you put that on there and that gets millions of views, and that kind of just branches out to a point where you have a band like Lorna Shore playing Lollapalooza. That is a very real thing that definitely happens.
There's a little bit more innovation with bands like Lorna, Slaughter to Prevail, Shout of Intent, Brand of Sacrifice, Darko, than there's happening necessarily in the metalcore scene. You fast forward to today, where again Architects is doing more of their Euro industrial stuff, which again I really like. I know there's a big outrage in the metalcore community with what to a point with their new style, and same thing with Parkway Drive, but they're doing their own thing. They're expanding, and I'm just like, who's kind of leading the charge anymore of at least modern metalcore?
That's the thing with like, who's leading the charge of modern metalcore, right? We talk about Killswitch, we talk about Fit for a King. Like, these bands aren't bands that just came out. They're not. And Mike, thank you very much for the resub, man. 14 months, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, these bands like Fit for a King's been around for a long time, but they're still very much ingratiated in metalcore. Killswitch Engage is, I mean, I was probably 6 when they first came out. You know what I mean? So like, it's hard to say like, well, like who's like the new big exciting metalcore band? Like, if you think of them, like, they've been around for a minute. You know what I mean?
There's definitely a few metalcore bands that, even though they're a little bit smaller, are super exciting
Yeah.
for me that I feel like will take the charge next, that are in.
We listened to one earlier, Grayscale Season. I think Grayscale Season is awesome. I think that they are really, really fun. I think they're really unique. You know, they kind of do a mishmash of sounds. I love it. You got bands like Sunfall, who just recently signed to Out of Line. You know, they kind of have a really cool sound that I like. There's a lot of like there's like a lot of like lesser known, you know, low count Spotify monthly listener bands that are great. They just don't have that notoriety.
Innovating, and there's some from different eras.
Oh, that Mike in the chat says he forgot who Spirit Box is. The thing with Spirit Box, I think, though, is like, I don't necessarily, like, they have metalcore songs, but I wouldn't know if I'd necessarily call them like a metalcore band. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they definitely have those songs, but I definitely, like, when I think of metalcore, like, you know, like Fit for a King, like, I don't think Spirit Box really is like that, but they definitely have some top metalcore bangers for sure.
There's like the prog metalcore bands like Invent Animate. Honestly, their last 2 singles.
Invent Animate is a band that like I've never been a fan of, but like the last few songs they put out, including their most recent EP, I've loved it. Those guys are killing it now.
Some of the best literal metalcore I've ever heard in my entire life. Like I don't know how that band is not like a million monthly listeners. Like that band is incredible.
Fit for a King is a generic statement. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely think that, and that's totally fine. But I think that they are like a straight up, they're like a metalcore band. Whereas I don't get that with Spirit Box. Yeah, no, you can, yeah, I mean, definitely, you can think that they're a stadium metalcore band. I don't think they're quite that, but I think that they definitely have some nasty bangers. But they are a band that can appeal to a stadium sized crowd for sure, or like in that environment. Which I think is awesome. But yeah, Invent Animate has been really good recently. They were the band that I haven't really been too much into, and then, you know, Mike in the chat brings up Era. Era's been around for a minute, but I think with their most recent album, they kind of tapped into a sound that's a little bit more accessible, that's a little bit more exciting. So yeah.
Era, of course, everyone,
Yep.
you know, a lot more people know Era. They're incredible with their progressive stuff. Of course, Crystal Lake and like Alpha Wolf. Like, there's a lot of really cool.
If I had to if I had to say who's my favorite like metalcore band right now, because like Alpha Wolf definitely has like that pissed core to them, right? But they are like, they're different. They kind of, it's like an accessible pissed core sound. I don't know how to put it, but I love them. I think that Alpha Wolf is amazing. I've always thought they were amazing, man. Like, but yeah, so Alpha Wolf's great. Yeah, somebody in the chat said Ice Nine Kills. They're great as well. Crystal Lake is a band though, but like I really enjoy Crystal Lake live, but their recorded stuff, especially like their most recent record, I couldn't get too into, but they did definitely release some nasty bangers. Like remember when they did like that the 2 songs they put out at the same time, that was sick.
More underground-ish, you know, to mid-sized metalcore bands coming from like Australia and Japan that are super exciting right now. And then there's more like the 2000s modernized.
Yeah, so he's gonna get into, you know, I'm gonna guess like Dying Wish and Vane and those kind of bands. I think those bands are nasty. Dying Wish. I don't, if you guys in the chat or whoever's watching this have not listened to Dying Wish, you gotta. I mean, they're absolutely disgusting.
Sound bands like Bleed From Within, Bury Tomorrow, that's definitely, you know, influenced by those bands, but doing a modern take, also incredible. And then there's the 2000s bands themselves that, you know, they're still going, like Trivium, All That Remains, Killswitch, Bullet's last few tracks have been great too. But even those bands, I feel like a lot of them have left the metalcore sphere because they wanted to move on to different styles.
So I know that Nick brought up Bleed From Within. I know Zeus is saying it in the chat right here too. I think Bleed From Within is awesome. They really appeal to like that thrashiness that really got me into metal in the first place. So I think Bleed From Within is awesome. And then Grim brings up Currents, another great band.
And expand and try different stuff. And then there's the bigger bands that are doing much more modern metalcore, like Wage War, Memphis May Fire. You know, A Day to Remember's new song was metalcore.
Yeah, so you know, Wage War, they kind of took, I think that, I don't know, man.
Songs over 4 minutes are just too long.
Axley Sauce, thank you for the sub. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, Wage War, you know, obviously, you know, with their album Pressure, you could say that they kind of took a little bit of a step back in terms of like the metalcore sound. but they are like, you can say whatever you want about them, generic, and I get that, but those guys smash, man. Those guys are going on tour with Slipknot, 3 Days Grace. I mean, they're absolutely killing it. Like, I think Wage War, they've always been so sick. I mean, you can't tell me that. Oh, Macho Mitch, thank you very much for the follow. You can't tell me that you've ever like when Wage War first came out, or even today, you just put them on. They just have like bouncy, fun riffs, and everybody has a good time with them, man.
Even Falling in Reverse isn't really metalcore, but like they have metalcore styles, and all those bands I even mentioned, like, yeah, I got to give huge thanks to my homie Cody, who is from Wage War, because I'm pretty sure he worked on all of those.
Yeah, he worked on the ADTR and the Falling in Reverse stuff for sure.
Songs and all those bands, at least all the new stuff, when it comes to either production or on the writing side. And I could tell his influence. Like, you can hear it.
Yeah, the riffs.
You open up the song, you hear the 50-50 octave split in the drop tuning. Breakdown comes, you hear the full octave tune down, and it's heavy as all craziness. And it's zeros, and it's metal. It's metalcore. That I hope doesn't get too saturated, and I hope not every single time. It's like, all right, here's the song with the octave split, and then the breakdown is the whole octave down tune, and it's like I hope it doesn't get overdone. And the thing I'm worried, I guess, the most about is I almost feel like metalcore is like a dirty word now, just like deathcore used to be, which as soon as you're classified as like just a metalcore band, you're boxed in by media, you're boxed in by communities and your audience that you have to do these specific things, and you gotta write metalcore songs. You can't have a song that's necessarily like it's super experimental or super different. You can't necessarily have like a deathcore song. You're a metalcore band, and
I think the one thing that's kind of outside of this conversation a little bit, but obviously still ties in, is I've always found it so interesting that with metalcore bands, like all the tours are 4 straight up metalcore bands. And it's like, to me, just thinking of it like, as I'm sure that has a lot to do with like management and, booking, tour managers and booking agents and all that stuff. But it's like, why would you put on a show that has 4 bands that are all relatively kind of the same sound when you could do like a little bit of a mixed bill? And the people that are going to those shows that all have like those 4 bands. So like, for example, this is no shade on any of these bands. It's just straight up just who I'm thinking off the top of my head. But like Fit for a King, Hollow Front, Currents. Let's say that, right? Whoever is going to that show, they will go to the show that has just 1 or 2 of those bands and some like other like really interesting acts on there too, like just out there, just like you wouldn't expect it. But instead you have 4 bands that are all kind of in the same sound, vicinity, so to speak. And there's not a whole lot of like, I don't know. I've just always found that interesting. Like, I just feel like you could make so much more of an impact, on the scene by just having a more diverse audience of people coming to these shows and just more diverse bands.
It's as simple as that. And that can be, very
what's up, Master?
Very annoying in as a band, and it can definitely withhold and limit your creativity, which is sad. And I feel like that's why, bands like Architects and Parkway Drive, like they did it. Like they were the top of the metalcore chain.
Yeah.
Like they made it. They did some of the best metalcore albums ever, and they wanted to get to the next level, but maybe they realized, I guess, metalcore wasn't at the next level. They needed to expand into different audiences, into European audiences. I think a good chunk of that
exactly,
is,
Zeus.
Just different audiences, different subsets of genres to upgrade as a band, because metalcore, as much as I love it, especially in the modern age, I do understand how it can be limiting stylistically to bands. I mean, even for Termina, my own project, like I don't call this a metalcore band. I always call it a modern metal band, because I don't want to just do metalcore songs.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of just talk about, my project, Bitter Bliss, I mean, obviously I have like a sound identity, but I would never say that Bitter Bliss is a metalcore project. I just think it's a modern metal project. Yeah, I mean, you use the same word as Nick. I think it's just a modern, like just like a heavy project. We definitely don't have, the poppy choruses or anything like that. It's very breakdown centric. And I wouldn't consider Bitter Bliss a metalcore project either, because I think, like Nick said, when you hear the word metalcore, you think intro, verse, chorus, build up, breakdown, and you do like what I call like the underwater vocal, where they like say the words of the chorus and they go back into the big chorus and then they do the outro. So I definitely Bitter Bliss isn't like that. I know that Termina definitely has some of those characteristics, but I don't consider them like a straight up metalcore band. They do. I mean, you saw it with their album last year, Dysphoria. They do different sounds across the board.
I want to be able to do a deathcore track if we want.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do a weird Deftones Black Gaze ballad. I want to be able to throw in a Thal track if we need to. You know what I mean?
And I think that's a great mindset to have, because he's not pigeonholing his sound, and I think that obviously the people who watch Nick know that he's a talented guy and he can kind of do whatever sound he wants. But I think that's the difference right there, and I think Nick's kind of said it, is that with Termina, he's doing all these different sounds from the beginning. He's not doing 10 years of, the metalcore only sound and kind of, acclimating listeners to that sound. I think that's what, if anybody is starting a band in 2022, you got to do that. If you're doing an EP or you're doing an album or you're just releasing singles or whatever, you got to have a sound variety right off the bat. You got to do it.
I mean, to have that freedom by setting those standards up early on, so you build your fan base to a much, more diverse and variety-esque.
Yes. What I've been saying, and Nick nailed it right on the head.
Palette, maybe, and you have more freedom just to kind of go about. Because, again, like we're seeing, like Architects or Parkway or other bands that have went the metalcore route, Bring Me, right? And then as soon as they leave the metalcore era, it's like the metalcore scene seems to just exile them almost. Right, which is sad to see, because these bands have so much good music in general, but it's metalcore bangers as well, even if they're not doing metalcore anymore. And I think it's just hard to see, or maybe hard to accept, that metalcore maybe does have that ceiling, and it's hard to expand past that as a band unless you explore these other genres. Let me know what you think. I hope crazy things are coming. There's a lot of good things happening and brewing, but I feel like the deathcore scene is a little bit ahead of the metalcore scene right now. That's all I'm saying. And I hope both of them can intertwine and work together and blend with the modern metal sphere in general to really just make, this new generation of metal like huge.
Yeah, so I've already liked the video, but here, I'll link it to you guys. Obviously, all you guys are already subscribed to Nick, okay? I don't need to tell you to subscribe. But give it a like, leave it a comment, just help it push it out a little bit further, because I think Nick makes a lot of great points here. Nick's my homie, he's my homie, but I agree with him wholeheartedly. It's definitely one of those things that's hard if you're a metalcore band that has been a metalcore band. Like, you think of if you were a metalcore band in 2006, okay, and now you're trying to become like a Euro Fest metal band in 2022, there's going to be pushback. You got to accept it. And and like the thing is like you either need to just got to do what you're going to do. Axel, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. And Samuel, thank you very much for the sub. It's one of those things, man, where like you just got to bite the bullet and you got to put up with it, or you got to do what Nick said and just acclimate that audience from day one. And that's all you can do. But I totally agree. Deathcore definitely has a much more of a sound variety. It's very exciting. A lot of it's not for me, but I love a lot of it as well. And I hope that metalcore, gets with the program here. Okay.